Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, Hogan reelected, but Drive for Five wiped out by the blue wave. Marc Elrich wins county executive race. What will this mean for Montgomery County? And if the past 2 years were all about Trump, what can we expect in the run-up to the 2020 elections? Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the Dean of Democratic Punditry, Sam Statland, Secretary of the Maryland Republican Central Committee, Mark Uncapher, former Maryland Assistant Secretary for Business, William Askinazi, and education activist, Cynthia Rubenstein. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. When Councilman Marc Elrich won the closest primary victory in Montgomery County history, defeating businessman David Blair for the Democratic nomination to be county executive, there was great anticipation that the general election would be equally as suspenseful. This view was encouraged by the independent candidacy of Councilwoman Nancy Florine, getting the support of the business community, and Republican firebrand Robin Ficker challenging from the right. On election night, the only suspense generated was the lengthy delay in announcing election results because of a record turnout for the midterm election. Once the vote was announced, Marc Elrich had garnered 64% of the vote. Sam, here is your moment to gloat. You were a loud vocal supporter of Mr. Elrich, and frankly, he decisively trounced both of his challengers, Ms. Florine and Ficker. So why didn't Ms. Florine fare better?
Gloat, gloat, folks. I'm so happy that Mark won. It's really absolutely terrific. We're going to have a new era here in Montgomery County. And I hope that everybody participates to make this a very, very successful county executive, which makes it all good for every citizen within the county. She just didn't have any troops in the street. You know, to win an election, money is helpful, but obviously a lot of money in a race turns voters off in Montgomery County.
But she got the endorsement of the Washington Post.
Well,
early. The Post came out early for her.
And the Post, while they came out early, they certainly became silent before early voting started. They disappeared. They were non-existent. And in fact, in one of the articles that they did on Florine before early voting, they actually complimented Mark and did a fine job. And then when Mark's article came out, it was even better. And now we're into early voting. And when you saw the results of the absentee ballots and how many were out and how many came back.
But you're not telling me why she didn't do better.
Well, that'll give you one example. Mark did a very, very successful absentee ballot campaign. He was the only candidate there. Now, Nancy had all this money, but wasn't sending out any literature to anyone saying, vote for me if you're absentee. She had no troops in the street. There were no volunteers. I want to shift gears. And she was a terrible candidate, quite frankly, and didn't appear well in the media and at the debates. She looked out of it, actually.
All right. Well, Mark, during his 3 terms on the county council, Mr. Elrich was seen as a loner, and his brusque personality was on display while delivering his victory speech, where he attacked Mrs. Florine for having the temerity of running as an independent. Can Marc Elrich govern?
Well, in this particular political environment, as a Republican, I guess I'd be hard-pressed to say that a chief executive who's combative and acerbic can't govern. So, yeah, he could probably do okay as county executive.
Yeah, he'll do great as executive, because what he said is that Nancy, in one of her speeches, said that she wanted to unite the Democrats and unite the county, and Mark came back and said she certainly did. She united the Democrats behind him with a 70% vote count. 70
I want to go
points.
to Bill. Well, Bill, talk about Florine's for a minute, but also talk about why Robin Ficker didn't do
okay.
better.
Well, just quick comment on Florine. Here's a professional, lifelong Democrat. And, and then she, doesn't accept the results of the Democratic primary and runs as an independent. We don't know how many people, I could tell you a lot of people were distasteful with that decision, and therefore her numbers went down. Now, with Ficker, everything's relative, Casey. Robin Ficker got only 9,000 votes less than Nancy Florine in this election. Think about that. He doubled his vote tally from 2006 when he ran from county executive. So relatively speaking, Robin Ficker did better than any time that Robin Ficker ran. But let's face it, we're in Montgomery County. So I think he performed or overperformed. No one expected Robin Ficker to win, probably, except Robin Ficker and some close people to him. Look at the statistics.
But let's look at the statistics.
Yes.
Jim Shalleck, running in the last election, got 34% of the vote.
Right. Okay.
The candidate before Jim Shalleck got 33% of the
Right.
vote. And and Robin this time
Yeah.
got 17% of the
True.
vote.
but
So
yet-
Nancy
both-
took from the Republican tally.
Yeah,
And both
exactly.
candidates combined didn't do as well as those two did.
True. So look, if you had a different messenger, with the same message and the energy that Robin Ficker brings to the fight, you might have an increased vote tally. But a lot of people feel because of his history, et cetera, that they just couldn't vote for him. And it's a shame because he has done a lot on substantive issues to move this county forward and increase diversity across the board and make the Montgomery County more of a two-party than it otherwise would be.
I want to change gears for a second and go to Cynthia. Cynthia, there are 4 new county council members. We've got Gabe Albornoz, Evan Glass, Will Jawando, and Andrew Friedson. Are these just younger versions of the people they're replacing, or do they have some substance to their own,
Well,
themselves?
they each have substance. I think we don't know how the dynamic is going to change on the county council with these 4 new council members. The first thing they have to do is basically drink out of a fire hose for the next couple of months to learn what they need to know to make it through this budget year. And we'll see how the council shapes them and how they shape the council. But they all are talents. They all have substantive backgrounds in the nonprofit sector, politics already, business. Gabe was the head of the recreation department.
Right.
He met a big payroll. He, of the 4, probably has the deepest understanding of the county, but they're all 4 very substantive.
And Friedson probably has the least. Friedson in District 1 probably has the least.
But he did have some budget analysis job.
Yeah, with Franco.
Yeah, with
Peter
Franco.
Peter Franco. But as far as county knowledge goes, I think that
Well, I want
absolutely
to ask you. We got Nancy Navarro is the incoming president of the county council.
Right.
Is she going to be able to do a good job of leading this council? You got about 30 seconds.
I think she'll do very well. She's experienced. She's been there. She knows the
This is
players.
her second term as president.
She knows the new folks as well as the old. She's dealt with them before. I mean, the people who ran for office were definitely political activists. Again, with the exception of Friedson, and know the county fairly well.
All right. Well, let's take a look now at the governor's election. Republican Governor Larry Hogan once again made history Tuesday night by becoming the first Republican elected to a second term in Maryland as governor since 1954. That's almost as old as I am. But for all of his popularity, Mr. Hogan was unable to sweep other Republicans into office. Larry Hogan proved himself to be one of the most adroit and skillful politicians anywhere. Will he be able to work with the Democratic-dominated General Assembly now that he didn't overcome that veto-proof majority in the Senate?
Well, falling short means that his vetoes can be overturned, and that's what the Drive for 5 was all about. The challenge that he'll face in the next session is that many of the centrist Democrats, especially in the Senate, were defeated in the primary or retired, and so the overall composition of the Senate, at least in the Democratic caucus, has moved farther to the left or farther in the direction of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party.
It's younger.
Well, age is
Newer
an issue,
ideas.
but the issue I think will be that there will be certain. I don't want to rain on the glow that comes from the victory, but there will be some real challenges in the next session because the votes are there to override the governor's veto, and that will force him to be that
The
much
numbers
more
didn't
accommodating.
change, did they? You had you picked up one and lost one?
No, actually, well, there were
was a
2
net.
pickups. Yeah, 2 pickups and 1 loss. So there's a net of 1,
Right.
but it doesn't change
Doesn't
the
change
math.
the dynamic.
Yeah.
Casey, I think-
Yeah, Bill.
I think a lot of the Democratic leaders in the different counties recognize that this governor has the support of the people. as shown by the results. He's already come out with a platform of taxes, redistricting and reform, education, transportation. He's going to focus on that in his second term. If dollars are going to flow down to the counties, there's going to be a lot of participation and a lot of goodwill. So I think Governor Hogan it was an astronomical feat to do what he did in a Democratic state like this. And I think he's got a future beyond this being a governor in the state of
They
Maryland.
say he wants to run for president already. But listen, before we go there, you touched on redistricting.
Yes.
On Wednesday, a federal panel
Right.
ruled that Maryland can't use the existing congressional districts in the 2020 election, and we have to have new districts by 2020.
Yes.
How's that going to play out?
I think it's going to play out wonderful for the Republicans. The Fourth Circuit ruled, quoting one of the judges, that gerrymandering, which is the artificial configuring of a district to put one party in place over the other, is a noxious cancer. And that's what it was in the 6th Congressional District. The Democrats in 2010 rigged up the system so that 375,000 voters were removed, and the Republican majority in the western counties were diluted. There was no way a Republican could win. Now we're back to a 4-4. Will certainly be a 5, probably a 5-3 fight for congressional people throughout the state. I think it's a very good thing. I think it's restoring what the Constitution, both on the state level and the federal level, says about equal man, equal vote, equal woman, equal vote.
I want to go to Mark. Do you think that? Is it going to be that favorable for Republicans
I
from a
think
redistricting?
it's a challenge because there are very distinctly Republican areas around the state. So by taking Carroll County and putting that in District 8, you ended up with an area of the state that's completely different. I mean, Jamie Raskin, God bless him, represents
He doesn't know where
Cynthia.
He doesn't know where
He
Potomac is. I can tell you
He
that
doesn't
right now.
represent Carroll County, which is one of the more conservative areas. So the challenge that redistrictors are going to have is being able to create a balance. You can move Republicans from one area to another area. The easier way, quite frankly, is to put communities together. In particular, the Sarbanes district, number 3, is
Terrible.
one of the worst ones. You literally can't drive from one part to the other. You got to go by water because the different parts of the state are connected. If you begin to change that, you'll change the dynamic for the rest of the districts as well.
Last point.
I'd love
if
to
I
see.
Go ahead, Sam.
I'd love to see a commission set up. I hope that the Democrats will get their act together along with the governor and set up a commission so that we have a much, much more realistic and fairer redistricting within the state of
Well,
Maryland.
the opinion
To make the races.
the opinion demanded that there be a commission set up, and if they
No.
yeah, and if they don't,
No, it said that if they can't,
If they
it would go
can't,
back to the court.
but
and
the
they would
judge
appoint
who
it.
wrote the
Right.
opinion, one of the judges really favored a commission.
Look, Martin O'Malley gave a deposition in this case. It was brought by 8 plaintiffs who were Republican people, and my hat's off to them. Martin O'Malley admitted that the redistricting was done for the purpose of unseating the Republican. Roscoe Bartlett, who was a long-term congressman in that district, was defeated by John Delaney because clearly the lines moved. Not
Yes,
because
but
of
also
merit.
Roscoe, I don't think had his heart into that race either.
I disagree.
Now, we're going to have redistricting, so we have the redistricting.
Yeah.
And now we have a Democrat in power, Trone, in that district. The question is over the next 2 years, whether he can move within the district to solidify enough votes to maintain the seat. And that's going to show you how good or bad redistricting turns out to
Well,
be.
Sam,
Because if it's 50-50 and he wins,
we got to go to a break. But what I think is ironic from this decision is that Mr. Trone dropped a fortune to try to become a congressman from District 6, District 8. Then from District 6, he dropped another fortune. He may only be a one-term congressman.
but he was covering all of the bases with the
When we
voters
come
within
back from
both
this
districts.
short break, if the past 2 years were all about Donald Trump, what can we expect in the run-up to the 2020 elections? Stay tuned. Welcome back. Less than 24 hours after the midterm elections and before several key races have even been settled, Democrats and Republicans continue their political battles. Here's a snippet of what occurred just on Wednesday, the day after the election. Incoming House Judiciary Committee Gerald Nadler was overheard by a reporter on the Acela train to New York plotting investigations of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh and impeachment proceedings against President Trump. A CNN reporter argued with President Trump in a press conference and was banned from the White House grounds thereafter. Attorney General Jeff Sessions was mercifully put out to pasture, and Democrats demanded that his replacement recuse himself from the Mueller investigation. Sam, just another day in Washington. Is this what it's going to be like for the next 2 years?
I really sincerely hope it is not. I think I, as well as everybody that I talk to, is absolutely tired of this partisan politics, because in the end, the work of the people is not being accomplished, which is what these guys are being sent there to do. So can't we temper our anti-party angst at one another and get legislation passed that helps people?
Do you think Nancy Pelosi, who has suggested, at least, that impeachment, if at all, should be a bipartisan effort, she's going to be able to temper those activists in her now majority?
Well, I
Those
was
chairmen?
always hoped that Steny Hoyer actually would replace her in Congress, but I know that that's not going to happen.
He
And yeah,
announced
she
he's running
knows her
for
way
majority
around.
leader.
Look, obviously she knows her way around, and she has, enough pull just within her California delegation for a significant vote. So will the same stuff happen? I don't know. I'd like to see people more congenial. I'd like to see people passing legislation.
Oh my God.
And we need legislation on so many
Kumbaya
topics.
moment.
Yeah, really.
Healthcare, we need it on the immigration issues, transportation. So why can't they work together and get something done?
They can't work together because even the Democratic Party is so divided at its core. The new wave of socialist millennials is fracturing the old Democrats like Pelosi and Steny Hoyer. So how could an octogenarian speak for the Democrats, who are the new Democrats who are 20 years old? How could that happen?
Oh, it's going to.
Cynthia, I want to.
Yeah, please.
I want you to. I want you to chime in on this, but also, if all the things that I talked about weren't bad enough, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg fell and is recuperating from broken ribs, reminding everyone once again that control of the United States Senate matters more than control of the House. Are we seeing the new normal?
Well, Democrats are on pins and needles, because not only are we concerned about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but also Stephen Breyer, who is 80 years old. And it could be either one of them who steps off the Supreme Court before the end of this administration, which would be an opportunity for the president to put another Brett Kavanaugh or Neil Gorsuch on the court, or a female with the same
Well, we've run out
philosophy.
of Georgetown prep lawyers, so I don't
But
think
there's
we.
still Notre
I don't think we can.
Dame, and
I don't think
there's
we.
Casey, your name is up.
Yeah, I
isn't
know.
it?
I know. Believe me, I'll take myself out of the running. But you wanted to respond to what Bill said.
Yeah, I also wanted to talk about Nancy. I want to talk about Nancy Pelosi. I think Nancy Pelosi has a good point of view, and she has her eyes on the prize, which is 2020. She will try to keep Democrats from overreaching
Good luck.
and feeding the fire on the right-wing Republican side, Donald Trump's base.
Mark, do you think that's possible?
Well, I think that's the challenge, is both parties have seen this movie before, but they've seen different movies. Democrats have seen Watergate and All the President's Men, and Republicans remember what happened 20 years ago when they impeached Bill Clinton. If it was perceived as being simply a political act, it goes to the Senate, and they're not two-thirds vote to convict.
Well, we also have to remember that the Democrats went after George Bush in his second term. So this is going to be great. It'll be great theater and great fun, and you get to stay tuned for parting shots when we come back from this short break. And welcome back. On Halloween night, when many teens were out pulling harmless pranks and trolling neighborhoods for candy, 4 teenage boys at Damascus High School were allegedly raped and sodomized in what one victim described as a football team tradition of brooming by other teammates. According to news reports, police have charged 5 teenagers with second-degree rape counts. Nonetheless, the response from MCPS seems rather muted. Principal Casey Krause wrote a letter to parents calling the alleged behavior upsetting and unacceptable, while the empty suit that is MCPS Superintendent Jack Smith sent all students a video on hazing. Hazing? This was a gang rape on his watch. Brooming is allegedly a ritual of the football program at Damascus High School. One of the victims said that he heard rumors about the ritual when he was in middle school, but he didn't believe them. But why should he? It's barbaric behavior. But if it's true, that means there's a rape culture at Damascus High School that's been going on for years. What were the coaches doing when these attacks occurred after practice on school property? Why hasn't the entire program, both JV and varsity, been shut down and these coaches fired? This is unacceptable. What will the new county executive do about this? More of nothing. Parents should be demanding answers, and frankly, we all should be doing the same. This outrage should not be turned over to the police and be hidden by a veil of silence because the victims and the perpetrators are minors. Political leaders need to take a stand. We all need to take a stand. Now with parting shots, Sam Statland.
Well, folks, we have a new era with a new executive who I personally think will do things like what happened against Damascus. But what I'd like you to do is go to www.marcelrichtransition.com and take a look at a website that has been set up for the transition. There's an opportunity for you to participate in the transition. We're having a series of meetings throughout the county. We want people to participate because we want to know how you want the county run and what your expectations are. And there's also a section where we're looking for people who may want to come to work for the county with applications online right now. So www.marcelrich.com to take a look at the transition team and see how you can make a difference here in Montgomery County.
Thank you, Sam. Mark Uncapher, your parting shot.
Bethesda Beat reported today that a insurance company has determined that Bethesda is the fourth hardest working city in America. Now, I suppose that's the good news, although the bad news is the way they reached that conclusion was they took the time spent commuting and the time spent working and put that together, and unfortunately, we all know how long the commutes are for people in Bethesda. But at least I'll put the good news on it and say hats off to Bethesda for being quite such a hard-working community.
Thank you, Mark. Bill Askinazi, your parting shot.
Our Constitution is alive and well. My faith in the rule of law is reinvigorated after the Fourth Circuit's decision that we talked about earlier about redistricting. We come down in democracy to the validity and the value of a vote. And one person, one vote is a rule of law that this country stands on. Recently, we've talked about that the Sixth Circuit, the 6th Congressional District is now going to be reconfigured to truly reflect the will of the people and to get rid of this gerrymandering artificial lines. To me, that's a big applause line, and that we're going to have a fairer representation in the next election than we've had in the past 2 elections.
Thank you, Bill. Cynthia Rubenstein, your parting shot.
A remarkable image on Tuesday evening when Alan Kittleman, the Republican county executive in Howard County, lost his race for county executive to Calvin Ball. In order to concede the race, he showed up at the victory party and congratulated his opponent for winning the election. It was a total class act.
Thank you, Cynthia. And I was just reflecting on all of the things that were talked about during this election. One of the things that was not talked about very much in the election for county executive was transportation. There was some mention of bus, rapid transit, and how to improve I-270. But the reality is, and I want you to think about this, both Nancy Florine and Marc Elrich voted against even studying a third crossing of the Potomac River Bridge. Think about this when you think about who you've now elected as your county executive. Transportation is going to get worse because this county executive and this county council don't really care about anybody other than the people from Tacoma Park and Silver Spring. So when you go to vote next time, you may have a more reason for voting a different way. I want to thank the panel who sacrificed their Friday evening to appear on our show. And of course, I want to thank the viewers who tune in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.